Hello, this is Professor Gruhn, and welcome back. We are going to work our way through Murach's book, PHP MySQL 2nd edition, and we're starting off with Chapter 1. So let's see how we do. Chapter 1 is actually pretty straightforward and easy. There's not a lot to do. It's like most typical intro chapters in any book. But let's go over it at a real high level, and the assignments at the end aren't that hard. It's pretty much follow along the instructions, and your homework sheets are posted on Blackboard, and you should be all set for that. What are the objectives? The objectives of this chapter are to install XAMP and to understand starting and stopping the server, understanding a PHP application, running a web application, entering a URL and watching it run, and viewing the source code. The objectives, we're going to learn a little bit about client-server architecture and learn about HTTP requests, distinguish between a way a web server processes a static web page and dynamic pages. This is really important. This really is probably key to what makes PHP PHP. Talk about the different components, describe the way a web application is deployed on your own computer and then on the internet, the components of a HTTP URL, and describe what happens if you omit one or more parts of the URL, and describe the benefits of using an IDE like NetBeans for application development. And as I've already mentioned, NetBeans is new to me, so we'll be figuring this one out together. So let's take a look at web architecture. So I'm on page 4 and 5 of the book, and basically what you see is you have here we go. I'm trying a new tool here. I'm going to see if I can get this to work. Let's see, tool. I want to freehand. Okay. So here you have a client, and that's basically somebody's computer. They're logged onto the internet, and when the browser appears, they type in www.google.com, and the code goes from the client to the internet, and it goes through a bunch of different points through the internet and ends up at google.com's web server. And the web server has the static pages and the PHP pages and all the code on it, and then Google has a database server behind its web server, and that database server has the information stored in it. So what happens is a request is made to the database server, it brings back the data, puts it all together, builds the page, sends the page back to the internet, and then ultimately back to your computer. In the same way, you'll have a computer, and you just pull up your email software. The email software, you'd write your email up, and then you hit send. You're sending a message to the internet, to the email server, and then the email server is going to send that email back to the internet, and then to another person, and basically whoever's email address you typed in. That's the internet at a very high level. Okay, so it looks like I have to get out of draw mode to change to the next slide. And then here it is expanded that much more, where basically the internet really is a lot of different clouds and a lot of different computers all hooked together sending data across through different places. Some key terms that you'll be learning and talking about in when we talk about internet technologies is server. Server is not only just the hardware, but it's also the software that delivers the web pages, delivers the data. It's the client, and usually the server is thought about as software that's out there. That's the Google server, the CNN server, but also you can have a server, web page servers on your own machine locally, and you can kind of be a client and a server at once. The client is the person who's receiving the information. The network is all of the connections. Some networks are local area networks, which are local to a business, local, like if you have Wi-Fi at home, that's a local area network. A wide area network is a larger scope of that. Internet is everybody. And then the IXP, exchange point, I'm not sure what that is. I've not dealt with that term, but ISP is an internet service provider. The internet service provider is the person where you get your internet services from. Maybe it's Cox or Comcast or somebody like that. And a router basically is a switching device that directs the traffic from one server to the next. I kind of mentioned this before already. Now we're on page 6 and 7. That basically there is this thing called HTTP, Hypertext Transit Protocol, markup, Hypertext Transit Protocol, and it basically is electronic code that is sending an electronic message out to the internet. And there's a request. So when you're on your web browser, your client web browser, you're sending HTTP code. It's kind of secret code that is then sent to a web server somewhere. That web server reads the code and then processes it, builds an HTML file or has one, and then sends a response back to the person, to the website, to the client that just received, who sent the message. So what's really interesting is if you're on your computer and you type in a browser message, www, and you hit enter for send, you're sending a packet of information. Think of it like a semi-truck of information to go from your house to Google, to some other web server. And what's really interesting is in that semi-truck of information that there is the address to which the semi-truck has to go, but the HTTP request also has the address of the response to where it came from. So it knows where to send it back, and then it sends back the information. Another picture of the overall architecture. Boom, boom. Done that. So now, this is sample HTML code right here. You should know how to do this already. My assumption is that you know how to create this page right here, where it's from HTML to HTML. The request and the response here, this is what the HTTP request looks like. This is what the information that is sent in the response, coming back with all of these tags. Now these tags of information, basically then the browser, Chrome, Firefox, IE, they know how to take these tags and then interpret them into information to display on the screen. Hypertext Transfer Protocol and Transmission TCP Internet Protocol are two ways or two methodologies that are used to send data. And basically it's how the data is organized. So if I type http://www.google.com And you can see it actually went to HTTPS, and that letter S is saying this is a secure connection. So it was the methodology that I typed something in my browser, I sent a request out to Google, it went through the internet, and then sent back this page. If I do a right-click view page source, I see all of the code that made that page actually display in my browser, and do a whole lot of other things as well. Now, what's important here is there's two types of web pages to think about. One is static web pages, and in most cases, most of you have created static web pages, and those static web pages have been sitting on a web server out there. Somebody goes to your website, and the page displays. The difference here is when we use PHP, this is programming code. This PHP code, working with HTML code, actually creates the final product of HTML. So you will write PHP code, PHP programs, and the code you write, it will get processed on the web server, and getting processed, and it may get data from the database server, but it's going to get processed on the web server, and it's not going to send back PHP code, it's actually going to send back HTML code. So what's interesting is if you were to do a view source of a PHP page, you won't see the source code of the script. You will only see the end result of the PHP, the end result of the HTML that the PHP will be creating. Some more terms to learn, and web browsers, everybody's familiar with Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer. By the way, Internet Explorer is losing its ground in the world. It's no longer the most popular browser. Safari and Opera are used on Mac machines, and web servers, Apache and IIS for Microsoft. Apache is probably the most common. There are a lot of Microsoft Internet web servers out there, but for our class we'll be using XAMP, a web server. Server-side languages, PHP, JSP is Java Server Pages, ASP is Microsoft-based, Perl and Python. This is code that lives on a web server, does work, and then produces out HTML. Database servers, we've already dealt with MySQL, but also other database servers that are out there are Oracle, DB2, and MySQL Server. Okay, I'm going to flip through, see where I'm at page-wise in the book. That gets us page 6, 7. That gets us page 8. Page 8 is pretty important to read. It talks about how these dynamic web pages are actually produced, and it'll help you understand that better. It puts us to page 10 and 11. And then page 12, the history of PHP. So what's interesting, as a language, it really hasn't been around that long. Personal homepage turned into personal homepage hypertext processor. So PHP has been around since 1995. So 95 to 2005 to 2015. So 20 years. It's been around a while, so that's actually a pretty long life in internet terms. The history of MySQL, starting again around 1995. And you're not going to be quizzed on any of this, so don't worry about it, but it is kind of interesting. That puts us to page 13. MySQL notes, a little bit of the history of finally Oracle ended up buying it, and little politics and stuff around there, but Oracle was holding back on their MySQL server stuff, but no longer. They're actually supporting it pretty strongly. Okay, the first page of an application. And so what's interesting is that when you put a folder on a web server, that folder has to have an index.html page or an index.php page. That way you don't have to type the name and it will automatically display that page. Now, if I take a look here where it says localhost book apps chapter 1 product discount. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run my web server. So I'm going to XAMP. Give me a second. Ooh, what happened here? I think. Okay, hang on a second. Okay, I'm back. I figured out my problem. So I'm going to run my XAMP control panel. I'm going to hit start for the Apache. And I'm going to hit start for my SQL server. And it looks like it's going fine. And then I'm going to open up a browser. And I'm going to type localhost. And here you can see localhost book apps. And from the other video, you know that I already renamed the index PHP and the index HTML pages, so they won't automatically appear. So I'm going to go to book apps, and right there, chapter 1. And notice that this page, just like the PowerPoint is displaying. If I do a right click on the page and click view source, you can see this is the HTML that is getting executed to show the page. There's a form action here that it's going to run display discount.php. So it will actually run that page. So now if I type in a test and I go camera, list price is $400 and percent discount is 10%. Now I'm getting this display of camera $400, discount amount $40, and the discount price is $360. If I right click and I view the page source, you can see this is now the HTML that's being displayed. But I want you to know something, that this is not the code that was written in the PHP page that actually did the work. So let's go back again. Remember that this HTML page is executing this PHP script called display discount PHP. So now if I go into Notepad++, file, open, I got to hunt all the way down to E:, my computer, E. They couldn't make this any easier for us, could they? XAMP. Everything's going to live in htdocs. And then we said that this is in book apps, product discount. Notice that there's the index HTML page, but there's this display discount PHP. This code here is the code that actually did all the work to display the final page. And what's interesting here, the way they did it, is before the HTML page view, here at line 20, they did all the work. This is getting the information from the form. This is calculating the discount. This is applying it and formatting the final view to different variables. And then finally, you can see inside the final output is where the values actually got displayed. So what I would like you to do is take a good look at both the source code for the PHP page, the display discount page, and understand that this code together actually ended up building. So here's the index page, click enter, built this page here. The other piece of information that's important to know is that the view or the display is happening from CSS. So if I open, and there's this file called main CSS. This file here is giving the look and feel for the final page. So for instance, if I was to take this solid navy and if I change this to red and then I made this 4 pixels and I saved it and now I refresh the page, notice that I just changed the color of the border. So, and that's what we will always want to do, is we want to use the CSS files for controlling how our data looks and for our final page looks. And so my assumption is you've already taken HTML, you understand how a CSS page is used to actually enhance how your final page looks. Okay, so again, we're on page 14 and it's introducing this product discount calculator. This is the HTML page, and then the next page is the final results, and that's the PHP page, which is a combination of PHP code and HTML code together. On page 16, here you see the HTML page, and it's highlighted the key things. The key thing here is that form action equals display discount. It's saying, I'm going to take the information in this form and I'm going to send it to, that PHP program. And notice here, the name of each of these forms are basically, each of these input boxes, these become where the data lives that gets fed into the PHP program. That's the rest of the index, the HTML page on page 17. Then on page 18, the CSS file is explained, and that's basically giving us our pretty look and feel. And then on page 20, the PHP file is explained. And if you take a look at page 21, what they do a really good job is that they highlight the PHP code, which is basically taking and calculating the information from the form and then putting it into variables that can get displayed down in the span tags of the body of the HTML. Notice this yellow, and look at each of these variable names, ends up creating this here as the final output. It's doing the math early and then sending it here for the output. Excuse me. And we've already done this. Is notice with Notepad, we can open the CSS page, the display discount page, and the index HTML page, and see the actual code that actually worked from there. Open files in Notepad. Everybody should be pretty familiar with how to do that. So that's what puts us on page 23. And closing files with Notepad, no big deal there. Changing our start setting styler configuration, selecting PHP in language, PHP in, so that's good. I've not done that, so let's do that. That might be a good idea. So if I open up here, and if I go to settings, style configurator, and here's PHP, and select PHP language list and comment in the style list, and comment here. Okay, that's what it's telling me us to do. Repeat this comment. Change the font name into the blank entries. Change the font name and font size in the drop-down list to the blank entries at the top of the list. Okay, so what you want to do is come over here and find Courier New. Courier New there. And then for comment line, where is it? Whoops. Courier New. Yeah, okay, so that's both, and save and close. And that'll show the comment lines for PHP in green for Courier New without changing the fonts. So that's, again, there's a lot of things in Notepad++. It's pretty powerful, the stuff you can do. XAMP, we've already seen that, and that puts us to page 25. How to start and stop XAMP, we've done that already. We've had this up and running. We can stop and start our web server. A little bit about the history of XAMP. XAMP stands for Unix, X, and it's available. X stands for cross-platform. Typically, LAMP, L-A-M-P-P, is for Linux. MAMP, M-A-M-P, or M-A-M-P-P, is for Macintosh, and WAMP, with a W, is for Windows Apache. So X is cross-platform, A is for Apache, the web server, M is for MySQL, P is for PHP, and the second P, if it's there, is for the Perl language. Now, this is really important to know, is that in your htdocs folder, here's your XAMP. htdocs is the root directory for your whole website. Now, there are a lot of other folders and directories under XAMP. So if I go to my XAMP folder, click on XAMP, there's a lot of stuff here that lives within XAMP. This is all supporting the XAMP application web server, whether it's PHP MyAdmin, PHP, the Perl language. Here's your MySQL database, mail server. But the key for us is we'll be living in htdocs. htdocs is the www root directory in which we would build multiple applications. So for instance, one application you might want to start in your htdocs folder is to right-click New Folder and just call it Project. And you can already start building your final project. Now, within your final project, you are probably going to need a folder called IMG. That's for your images. You're going to need a folder called CSS for your CSS pages. And you're probably going to need a folder called INC, and that's going to be for your PHP include files. So this is going to be a starting point of how I work with it. I am sure the book is going to show us some things differently. And for instance, if we go into book apps and we go into product discount, we see there's a project, don't worry about that. I know the book is using some things, like here's Guitar Shop. Guitar Shop, there's an admin folder, a cart, catalog, an errors folder, images, NB project, NetBeans project folder, utilities, a view, and this is model. This is for the model, view, and then the overall is the controller. And we're going to be learning about MVC, building an MVC application, which quite honestly I think is a little advanced, but it's interesting that the book is using that as their starting point, which maybe by the end of the semester we'll appreciate that a little more. So Within the htdocs, you build individual folders, and you can build multiple little mini websites, so to speak, within each one. So for instance, here we have htdocs, book apps, example exercise starts. The ex starts is files for the examples that you'll actually be able to, they kind of give you a starting point so you don't have to work so hard for the final exercises. How to deploy a PHP application onto a server. So now what happens there is, and if we take a look at, I'm going to load up FileZilla. We're going to use the FTP protocol. I'm going to see if I have a website out there available that I can connect to real easily. Let's see. simplystreet.com. Let's see if that'll connect for me. Okay, so now I want, this screen is in two sides. This side here, this is my remote site. This is the Simply Street server that's out on the internet. If we were to go to www.simplystreet.com, all we get is this blank little page. There's nothing out there right now, honestly. But that page is living right here in this www folder. This www folder, this page right here, index.html, is there. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm in the www folder. On my local side here, I'm going to go to my XAMP directory. There's my XAMP directory. I'm going to go to htdocs. I'm going to go to book apps and product discount. So if I'm at book apps and I come up to, let's see, where is it? Product discount. I'm going to right click and I'm going to upload that whole folder to my server. So now if I go www.simplystreet.com/ch01 _ product discount, now I've got that page. Notice it even has the red line, because what happens is in this product discount folder, if I double click here on my server, I have the CSS page, the index page, and the discount. And if I say I got guitar, the list price is $765.23, and it's an 8% discount. Now it ran the information out on my web server out here. So this is why you're going to need your own website, is that we're going to be able to take a lot of the examples that we do. We're going to find on our website this www folder, sometimes it's called public HTML. We're going to create subfolders within there and put our assignments out there and be able to see them publicly and not just make them locally on our machine. So it's really important to understand that what we've done is typically we work and we are dealing here on the local side. This is the local web server and web location that we're running our pages on. But we need to send them out to the internet, and we do that by using FTP protocol. and we're going to end up putting it in the www folder, and we'll probably create multiple subfolders within there to make them available. I am sure all of us many times have typed in these http://www, some website, a path, and a file. Now, what's interesting in today's internet, a lot of times you don't even need to type in that stuff. A lot of times you can just type in this stuff and it'll get you what you need. But this is the protocol. This is the secret coding, the digital coding style that the data is taken from point A to point B. This is the domain name. I liken it to a telephone number. If you were to type in www something else, you would get another website versus, think about it, is you have a lot of information stored on a web server, and you can't just call any number, you call any telephone number, you have to call the right telephone number. And this domain name is usually attached to an IP address. This is that folder that lives within the www folder or the htdocs folder, and this is the name of the actual file that's being used. Requesting pages. So now what's interesting here is the book talks about when you just do this right here, it knows to look in the www folder at the high level, and it will look for an index page. And if you want, this is getting the home page that lives in the www folder. For those of you creating new accounts, I suggest that you build up a home page. Now, what's interesting for us is we have this thing called localhost. Now, localhost is telling us, do we have a web server, do we have web software up and running locally on our computer? And localhost is actually the same as C:\XAMPP htdocs. That's the same as the www folder. This we've already seen, the book apps directory. That's the discount. This is it being displayed in Chrome. How to test a page for the first time. So now that's an interesting test. We could do that real quick. So let's go back to our browser. Now, here I am at localhost. Now, if I shut off, and so if I go to book apps, product discount, and type in something, 23.3, now I'm going to take the web server, and I'm going to hit stop and stop. My web server is no longer running. Watch what happens when I hit this button. It's struggling. It's looking for that web host. It's unable to connect. But now, the instant I start up the web server, now it's connecting and doing the work. So sometimes things might not work when the web server is not running. Also, I want to do one other thing. Let's go back. If I click here to product discount, this is actually index.html. Whoops, index.html. If I shut off the web server, it's actually, if I refresh the page, it's looking for it. It's not able to, it's load. It can't resolve localhost because it doesn't know where it is. But if I was to go into computer, boom, 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 way down to XAMP, htdocs, book apps, discount page. If I click on this page directly, the page is in fact working. But notice the reason it's working is because it's pathed out fully XAMP htdocs book apps. It's not using the web server to find where the page is located. A lot of our HTML pages will run display correctly without a web server running. However, this web page is calling a PHP page, and the PHP page needs to have a web server to make it work. What happens when I click it? The HTML of the page displays, but it didn't do the PHP work because the web server was not in fact running. So there's a lot of what can happen a lot of times is we might think something should work, but we might not have our web server up and running. Let's see, so that puts us out to page 30, 31, 32. Okay, I'm on page 34, and that gets us to NetBeans. Give me a second, and we'll see what we got. Okay, so I just opened up NetBeans for the very first time, and this looks like it's going to be kind of fun for us. Like I said, this is a new area. So start, all programs, find NetBeans, double click on NetBeans, give it a second to open up. I do have my XAMP server up and running. Now what I had to do is I had to go File, Open Project, and then I had to go Computer, E:, I had, for you it might be C:, I had to go to XAMP, I had to go to the HTTP docs. Remember, we're looking at in book apps. And then what was pretty cool is each of the folders, what used to be, what is actual folders, was actually, this information was listed. All I did was I clicked right here, I double clicked on that, and it brought everything up. And now I can open it up, and I can see all of the information. And I double click on display discount. This is the same thing that we were looking at in Text Wrangler. Here's the index page, and here's the CSS page. So if I was to go to the, if I click here on the index page, and I'm sure if I go run project, let's see what happens. Look at this. I can actually view the project running right from there. Test. And it will actually display and run. So I think there's going to be some good strengths and benefits for us to learn and get to use NetBeans. I'm sure I'm going to struggle through some of the things. I've not used this IDE before, but I need to add it to my I know how to do it list. So please go ahead and read pages 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39 tells us how to start a new project. And then that takes us then to some terms and then the exercises. And what I think I would recommend doing is already, if I go File, New Project, and if I want to use a PHP project, and then I'm going to click Next, and notice here, it's putting, it figured out, took a second, but it says, I know where stuff's going to go, XAMP HTTP, and I'm going to call this, I'm going to call this final project, just final project, and this way I can start put NetBeans meta into a separate directory. No, I don't think we want to do that. We don't want to put the, we want to leave that. UTF-8, I think 5.6 is fine there. So let's go next. Run has local website. The project URL, that makes sense. Keep that default. Framework. Hang on a second. Let's see what. Okay, I want to dig into this a little more. Let's not worry about selecting a framework. I think it's going to be a Zen PHP framework, but when I clicked that, I got this message, and then I tried to do that, and I got some errors. So let's not deal with the framework at this point. Click Next, and then click Finish. And now I have a new project started for my source files, my include, and my PHP. And what I can do right here is I can say just, hi there, save it, and I can now run. And here's the start of my final project that I have on my local host, something up and running. So what's interesting is I think the NetBeans is actually going to allow us some good flexibility to create multiple little mini websites on our htdocs folder and have several things going on. So I think I'm going to like that a lot. Again, I'm new to using NetBeans. I know a lot of people use it and stand by it for their web development, and I'm going to, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and most of you know I'm pretty old, so this is going to be a new thing. I'm just used to using Notepad++ or Text Wrangler or something like that, but I also use Eclipse, and Eclipse is a really good tool. I use that when I'm forced to at work for some of the tools that I have. Read through chapter 1. I kind of high-leveled it, and the exercises 1, 2, 3, and 4 are pretty self-explanatory. Dig into NetBeans. Let's try to really pound this out and figure this out, and let's start developing some web pages. Thank you, and have a great day.